So when it comes to reading for pleasure, I probably would have put the book down and not finished it at this point, but I'm really intrigued by the show. Hey, this is The Sword and the Pen Reflections. This is my casual alternative to The Sword and the Pen, which is my more formal video essays channel. This is part of the series where I am looking at Shadow and Bone, the book and the series, and I'm comparing the two. So if you didn't know, I am an editor and the book kind of editor. Also, I guess the movie kind now. Anyway, I am looking at both of these for the very first time. And for this episode, I watched episode 2 first, and then I read chapters 3, 4, and 5, which are covered in episode 2. And I'm finding that the show is doing such a good job of enhancing this story. It is giving more character dimension, having them do smarter things, having a secondary plot line that is really, really interesting. And there are very few mistakes. There were a few in episode 1. I thought that the way that they did the crossing wasn't so great, but for episode 2, I could only really think of one mistake, and it wasn't really a mistake so much as a convenience. So let's start with, I want to look first at the characters. So the characters, and we're just looking at the Shadow and Bone characters, not the Six of Crow ones. Well, we'll look at them too, but at the end. I did not have the greatest impression of the characters in the book, mainly because we were so focused on Alina's perspective. So the whole book is from her point of view, and we're just seeing things through her lens, and so she has her own concerns. Like when she goes to the tent, there's a few times where she's looking for Mal, and then she's concerned about, why am I here? Why are they, saying that I did something I didn't do? Nobody believes me. And there was very little time dedicated to showcasing other personalities. Now, when she gets into that carriage, and this happens in the book as well, she's sitting across two Grishas, two men who are heartrenders. In the book, I didn't get much of a distinction of personality here. And I think it's because Ivan did so much of the talking, and then there weren't very many dialogue tags to indicate how these things were being said. I mean, we got the impression that Ivan was kind of an a-hole, kind of a jerk, had a stick up his bum. But for Fyodor, is that his name? Fedor was his name. He was such he had such personality in the show, but in the book, nothing. I honestly could barely tell the difference between him and Ivan, because Ivan was such a strong personality, and Fedor was just there talking, I guess. And looking back on it, because I did go and reread just a little bit of it just now, he does say some of the same things that would indicate this is how he feels, but there was very little to showcase a strong personality there. And I think you can learn from this moment where the show gave Fedor such a unique personality. He was curious, and he was inspired, well, or at least very interested in Alina, that she might be the sun summoner. And he talks about how, well, if you're really the sun summoner, this is good news for the people, but also for us, because if you can destroy the fold, maybe the people won't hate us so much, or we won't have to have those walls around the palace. So I really liked this dynamic between Fedor and Ivan, and want to see more of this. So if you are writing a book or a movie script, give more personality to your minor characters, even if they're only there for a little bit. So on the other channel where I'm doing reviews for The Last of Us, there was a minor character that you saw at the beginning of episode. It was the one where they go to Jackson, and they meet this old couple who live in a hut, or not a hut, a cabin in the middle of the woods, and they were so funny. They had such strong personality, and I really liked, you could see what their relationship was. That's memorable. That adds value and richness to this story. It adds dimension, because it's not just your main characters and then a bunch of NPCs, right? So when you are when you are telling your story, see when there are opportunities to give specific roles to the minor characters. I mean, I'm actually hoping that we see more of Ivan and Fedyr. I'm possibly detecting a potential very good friendship between Fedyr and Alina, so I would like to see that happen. Also because I just thought he was cute as a button, so would that be appropriate? Cute as a button? He was just a cutie, so anyway. Okay, so the characterization for the Black General was much better in the show as well. So I read through the conversation. So there's a conversation that Alina has with him sitting at a fire when they're traveling. So they're actually traveling as a caravan, and they changed that for the show, that that she gets on the horse with the Black General, and the two of them ride up ahead, and they get there, they get to the little palace in no time. But in the book, they still continue as a caravan with the others. And she's sitting there by the fire talking to the Black General, and there are almost no indications of how the general is speaking or what. And I will admit, I listened to this first on audiobook, and I was getting some major, like, dark and mysterious and very low, and the exposing my having any kind of personality vibes from him. And I find that sort of thing childish and as a storyteller. And well, I get it that there is a niche for this. There are people who really enjoy the dark and mysterious one as the love interest, but I don't. And if you can do that, but add something more, I'm more interested. And that's what the show did. Yet again, it didn't lose what the book had. It added more to give more. So in the book, going back and reading it, there was very little indication of how he said these things. And in the audiobook, my gosh, it was just read like, I'm very mysterious and dark. You get to the show, and when he stops the horse and they talk, the actor did a very good job of having good facial expressions, and was good with moving his voice around to kind of show that, we're desperate for you. And, I hardly notice when people are trying to kill me, telling a joke. And there was a greater shift in his tone, or it was more obvious, something that was left to the reader in the book. And maybe that's not a bad thing. So maybe it isn't a bad thing to be as sparse with your specifics as possible so that your reader gets to fill in their own head what's going on. But I will say this. I don't think that the author would have lost an audience if she described a little bit more of personality in this first scene with him, this first real discussion scene with him. So that for me was a huge leap in good job, much better characterization with the Darkling in the book. And I think he's called the Black General more, I think, in the show than he is in the book. Gotta give me a break. This is episode 2, and I've only just read these chapters, so I still haven't quite got all of their names right. But going back to another character who was great, and other side characters who were great, Mal's friends, Dolhov and what was his name? Mikhail? Is that it? Anyway, the two of them are the ones who stop Mal from doing something stupid. And I like that they convince him not to go because he'll end up getting killed, and it ends up being a bit of a joke for them. Like, oh yeah, sure. He's like, okay, I'll do it this way because, oh crumbs, and I can't remember what the reason was that he said, I'll do it this way, because, it seems like the smarter way, or I don't want to get you guys in trouble. Dang, I can't remember what the heck he said. But either way, it wasn't because you're right, I would probably die. I'd probably get killed. And that's what his friends did. And they're like, oh yeah, sure, that's why you're doing it. The possibility of being killed had nothing to do with your decision. So I like these friends again. And you showcased the showrunner, or the writers in the show showcased that there was a difference in their personalities and gave them something to do. So this scene did not exist in the book at all. We didn't see it. As a matter of fact, I think everything that happens with Mal going forward is probably going to be a total invention of the the writer, or not the writer, the show. And it makes them likable and memorable, and it gives, again, more dimension to this story. So good job there once again. Who else do we have as far as personalities go? Oh yeah, the leader of the First Army. Is it the First Army? It's the guy who announced that Mal was going to be going across the Shadowfold. Again, he delivered some information that in the book, the Darkling delivered, and I like that they gave it to this general guy because it's far more interesting coming from him, because it shows us what the sentiments of the military, non-Grisha military people are. So he's the one who tells Mal, look, years ago, and this is in the show, not in the book, the information is, but the character who's delivering it is not. Years ago, I was told that a Grisha was worth, 50 guys. And then, less years ago, so 50 years ago, and then 10 years ago, I was told that they're worth a dozen guys. He's like, how soon is it going to be that, how much longer is it going to be until they're not really worth that much more? Like, technology is catching up so fast that the power of the Grisha is becoming obsolete. So I liked that we're seeing this losing battle of respect for the Grisha. This adds more political intrigue potential, because now what if the people decide to revolt against the Grisha at some point? And so I'm hoping that we're going to see this a lot. We're going to see that the Grisha are afraid that they're going to lose their position. And maybe this makes Alina's job, because they think that she is going to destroy the Shadowfold, it adds more conflict to that decision. If she destroys the Shadowfold, people won't really need the Grisha so much anymore. So yeah, we got Fedor's impression that people maybe won't hate us as much, but they won't need them as much. So what is their place in society going to be? Will the king even need them anymore? So it's very interesting to me that they have added this element and made it obvious that it is the people, or at least the military, who knows. And the military, although obedient to the king, is made up of people, and you suspect that there's civilians. You suspect that there are more who have this same kind of sentiment. So I liked that it was this general who said it, and not, I think it was the Darkling who said it in the book. It was either the Darkling or it was Ivan, but I'm pretty sure it was the Darkling. So something else I do want to go into, but I think I'm actually going to save it for another episode, when maybe some other stuff, there's not much else going on. The aesthetics in the book became apparent for the first time in chapter 4. And I mean the feel of the world, this being another place. If all you're going to do is have a few Russian-sounding names, that's not enough to immerse your reader in this world, that this is a Russian-inspired world, or Russia-inspired world. I would have liked more of that in the book, and it wasn't until chapter 4 that we actually got that. She gave a description of the inside of the Grisha tent, which was very nice, and then later she described the kefta that the Grisha wear, the bulletproof wool coats that they wear. I really liked that as well. Now in the show, they had so much more, and I'm going to go into that, like I said, at some later point, but from the very beginning in the show, you really got this aesthetic. They went all out to show you, and it had to be obvious because there's a visual element to a television series that isn't there when you're reading a book. But I appreciated that we had that aesthetic so obviously in the very first episode. A quick note about the Ketterdam series. Again, I am loving these guys. They are so interesting, and we're getting more dimension in them. Oh my gosh, I really want to know what happened between Kaz and Pekka, because it was something, and I'll bet it has to do with his hands, because we did not see Kaz's hands in episode 1, because I watched episode 1 a couple of times. You just see him taking his gloves off as he's about to wash them. And then the camera pans up, and wait, something's up with his hands. So I'm interested in that. I'm loving their personalities. I like that the first thing we see is an argument between Inej and Kaz. I like that so much, and I like that we see both characters going to Jesper afterwards, talking about what has happened. So first we had Jesper talking to Kaz, and then we had Jesper talking to Inej about the conflict between Inej and Kaz. And I like that Kaz, or not Kaz, Kaz, actually, yeah, it's Jesper. He tells both of them to trust the other. Like, that's the thing that's not working between them, is they don't quite trust each other. So the Jesper character is exposing himself to be very perceptive in some way. He knows something about both of them. Now he said, yeah, I've trusted Inej with my life before, and she hasn't, I'm still alive and she hasn't let me down. And then he tells Inej to trust Kaz, that, hey, consider that he might have a plan. He might be a little more clever than you think. So Jesper has an interesting history with both of these characters. And it's not with the three of them, it's like just with each other. So I like this little three-way friendship connection thing that we're seeing, where Jesper is kind of the glue between them in this scenario. I don't know if this is how it always works, but I liked that a lot. Ooh, another thing that I liked was how the plot with Inej was braided into the plot with Kaz trying to get a hold of the conductor. I thought that was great. I mean, why not have their storylines cross a couple of times? That way Inej doesn't just go off on some unrelated adventure. It has to do with the exact adventure or mystery or journey that they are on right now. So that was a surprise to me. She gets the guy and she's gonna kill him, and we get more information. We know that she has a sister or a brother who is out there somewhere, and she wants to find him. And this guy knows something. By the way, I like the conductor, so I'm really hoping he continues on this journey with this crew. I think with the tiny bit of time that we had with him, and this is, again, the shows are doing something so well. The show is doing something so well, where it is giving strong personality to minor characters. So anyway, I did love how the storylines were braided together. And if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. This sort of thing makes a reader or a viewer feel like there was a lot of effort put into it on the part of the writers. They really wanted to make this valuable. We didn't see Inej go off on some side journey where she had to go and kill some random guy, and now she's carrying around this weight of guilt. The guy who she was really, willing to go and kill, turns out it was a trick, and it was the guy who Kaz and Jesper are looking for. So I thought that was great. I thought it added the value in that we know it took some brain bending to make that happen. So I liked that a lot. Well done on the part of the writers in the show. I didn't have any reading to compare it to because I'm not reading Six of Crows. I've heard that it's just the characters, not the story, that has been carried over. So there was one thing that I did not like about the Ketterdam story in this case, and that was it was too convenient for Kaz to, at the exact moment when he needed a break in finding a way across the fold, he noticed the lady counting backwards, which I loved that cultural, what would you call that? That cultural quirk, the way that the people count money at the mines on the east side of the east side of the Shadow Fold. So that's how he knew, is that her unique way of counting money was different from people on the west. So good job there, adding some cultural interest involved in our story. But it was too convenient that just then he happened, he's sitting there going, I don't know what we're going to do. How are we going to figure out how to get across the Shadow Fold? And he looks around the casino, and bam, there's a woman from the other side. What I would have done instead is I would have put this character in episode 1 at some point, this woman, and him to have thought about it for, like, this looks odd to me and I can't put my finger on what it is. And then in episode 2, I would have had him looking at that woman, and maybe at some point earlier in episode 2, somebody brought up maybe a colloquialism about counting your money like a miner from the west, or something like that. That would have been a believable way for it to finally register with him, and it would have also made the audience feel like we were part of this journey with this character where we saw valuable things happening and him taking advantage of these valuable things rather than convenience just kind of falling in his lap. And in this case, he would have had to put the puzzle together in his head right at that moment, and that's when it clicks for him. And it would have been nice to see that. So that's a little change that I would have made. Otherwise, I'm really enjoying this. I liked that they brought back something that they'd said in episode 1. So Alina and Mal talk about the 3 rules, which was never be seen crying in public and always carry a knife. And I can't remember what the 3rd rule was. I don't know if they even said what it was. If you remember what it was, put it in the comments. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I like that they had that happen at the end of episode 2. So the first thing that Alina does when she's finally in a room privately by herself, she has a breakdown and just starts crying. So I liked that a lot. And then next thing she does is she goes and she finds a knife or a letter opener that can serve as a knife and puts it under her pillow. And then when she lays in bed, yeah, it's like she feels like she is wishing that Mal was with her, and Mal all on his own is in the same situation, wishing that he was with her, and it's almost like they're next to each other, looking towards each other as they did in the field. But anyway, it's doing a very good job, the show. Again, I have to applaud them for the changes that they have made that have really enhanced this story. So if you are a writer, I highly recommend reading the book and watching the show and seeing the changes that they made and recognizing exactly what it was that was better about the show than in the book, and see if you can look at your own work in that way and say, I could make my smaller characters more interesting by giving them more personality. I could focus a lot on, making sure that I put some cultural intricacies in my world from the very beginning, so that way people really feel immersed right from the beginning. Then the last thing being, if you have a mystery where a guy is going to solve it, don't have a lack of clues leading up to that point where because then it feels like it was a convenience. It feels like, oh, we need him to have a break in the case, so we're just going to put one right in front of him. Set it up so that we as the audience can see this happen. But anyway, did you enjoy the episode? Let me know in the comments. Do you prefer the book at this point or the show? I would love to know about that. Let's see. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Maybe check out my Ko-fi or Patreon. I do prefer Ko-fi because they do not take a fee, and Patreon does. And until next time, be good to yourself.